Confession that is beaten out of somebody, or somebody is electrocuted, or they threaten to kill their family, or they put them up against the wall and threaten to shoot them until they give their confession, whatever it may be, that is not a confession that you can rely upon.
I'm a Bishop Vasyl Pechko, and I'm doing the media investigation together with the knowledgeable people.
You know, the Soviet Union had its methods, it had its styles of doing justice.
Death sentence.
How this can happen?
You're going along in your life, and suddenly some event happens, and you're in the crosshairs. Now the criminal justice system is looking at you,
Right.
not someone else, you. And once you're in the crosshairs, you know, they put you on the train to Auschwitz.
But he was never proved to be guilty.
There were millions who died under the Soviet system,
And I have a question.
quite often placed in the gulags based on their confession,
Right.
which is essentially, we caught you, whether or not you committed the crime, you're going to do the time.
And it happened in Ukraine.
Andrei Didenko, a human defender from Kharkov, he told me the criminal system in Ukraine for 59 years never changed.
And when he got arrested, he was put into a closet with a single 200-watt bulb over his head.
Right.
And there were 6 people in the closet. Well, they could figure out at night how they could lay down, you know, sideways, and all 6 could sleep. Well, you know, after a week, they added person number 7.
Right.
After another week, they added person number 8, then person number 9, then person number 10 into that same closet.
And nobody could sleep.
Nobody could sleep. Now, 2 or 3 days of no sleep, sleep deprivation, well-known torture practice. When you 2 or 3 days without sleep, you're willing to sign anything. Let me go to sleep. And so they would have these people come out. It was very important to the Soviets, to the KGB, the KGB,
Right.
to say, hey, sign. We want you to sign that you did this, whatever it may be. Sign.
Everything in Ukraine, from the top to the bottom, everything is corrupted. You know, all the government level is corrupted. And people, Ukrainian people, made it corrupted.
You know, once they arrest you, you're on the train to Auschwitz. When you're a criminal defense attorney like me, you're asking yourself the question, how do I get my client off that train before he gets to that gas chamber? And the fact of the matter is that we as a country, America, we have a responsibility here in America to treat the accused with due process.
Ukrainian people are the ones to change their own country.
Who is standing up and saying this is incorrect? Who is standing up and saying you cannot wrongfully imprison people for life in some gulag with no due process? Hey, we didn't like you.
And I was presented many cases. That's why I decided to speak as a bishop. Exactly.
With all full civil rights.
Right.
And in addition to that, we need to stand for that, not just here, but to stand for it worldwide. And to say those
Everywhere.
people all over the world, you know, look, there are people that are in concentration camps in China right now, right? And re-education camps. You know that there are Christians that have been put into re-education camps in China, and they're having their organs harvested from them alive.
Alive.
And their offense is being Christian, right? There are Muslims that have been put in re-education camps. There are Falun Gong members put in re-education camps.
We need to speak for those who cannot speak.
How about if I kill your wife and family?
Right.
Have you committed the crime now?
For those who are in prison and they cannot change the system, we outside of this prison, outside of the system, need to speak.
And you know, when you're in prison, you don't have a lot of opportunity to do much. I would say to Ukraine, Ukraine has a tremendous opportunity here, and the president of Ukraine has a tremendous opportunity to lead.
My name is Vasyl Pechko. I'm a bishop, and senior pastor in New Life Worship Center here in Sacramento, and I have a question. And today I'm not preaching to you. Today we're going to do the program about the one young youth pastor. He was put to prison for the life in prison, but he was never proved to be guilty. And it happened in Ukraine. If somebody want to make you guilty and put you in prison, it's possible in Ukraine. And of course, it's horrible. And you would say, how this can happen? Well, that's my question. How this can happen? Why this happened? And what we can do about this? So today, I have with me in a studio the Attorney of Criminal Justice, Stephen Pidgeon. Stephen, welcome to the studio.
Well,
it's so
thank
good
you.
to have you.
It's great to be here. Thank you. I really appreciate your having us here today to talk about this incredible case of Yaroslav Missyak.
Right.
And we find it, both Vitaliy and I find this case to be really significant.
Right.
Because it represents a kind of an old school, if you will,
Right.
due process or the lack of due process. And we see this, I think, in part because of the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Right.
You know, the Soviet Union had its methods, it had its styles of doing justice. And as you know, I mean, the Soviet Union, of course, may have been peaceful for many, but there were millions who died under the Soviet system, whether they died in the gulags, whether they died in the Lubyanka, whether they died in the famines in Ukraine in the 30s. There were
Right.
millions who perished. And of course, part of that is the criminal justice system, which still has trappings of an old system,
Right.
which is essentially, we caught you, whether or not you committed the crime, you're going to do the time. This practice was not uncommon in the United States either, if you want to know the truth of it, Vasyl.
Similar?
Yes, we had similar problems in this country in the 1930s, even in the 1940s.
Long time
You had
ago.
a long time ago, you had a system, and it was, quite often it was practiced in the Deep South,
Right.
following the close of the Civil War.
Right.
And what you had during this practice was, if you had somebody that you suspected of a crime, well, you could take them into the back room and beat them with a rubber hose or put electrodes on them and zap them or whatever it took to force a confession. And then
Wow.
once you had a confession, and then they would sign the confession, and once you had the confession and you had it signed, well, then you could convict on the strength of this confession. He confessed. He admitted he did it. He said he did it. We don't need anything further than that. He admitted, he confessed, he did it.
The proof not needed because he already confessed it.
No proof.
So that's what happened to the Yaroslav Missyak in Ukraine. The guy who I know very well, he was my friend. We used to know each other. And I never believed he could have done such a horrible act as killing his mother, his grandmother, grandfather, and uncle. And I never believed this. And they say, oh, the guy came, just showed up, and he admitted he did it, and there you go. Nothing else we're gonna need it. That's
Yeah.
the horrible thing.
And that's a problem, because the truth is that when you see a coerced confession, you have a problem because it has no indicia of truth. It has no indicia of truth. So, for instance, I might pull you out of the clear blue sky and say, Vasyl, I think you committed this crime. Well,
Right.
no, I didn't. Absolutely not. Well, how about if I kill your wife and family?
Right.
Have you committed the crime now? It was funny because, in our friend's book in the Gulag Archipelago,
Right.
in this book, there's a detail of all of the persecution that took place that put people in the gulags, and they were quite often placed in the gulags based on their confession. Solzhenitsyn, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, right?
Right.
And he details about the fact that they would take you, for instance, when he got arrested, his crime was seeing Germany,
Right.
and when he got arrested, he was put into a closet with a single 200-watt bulb over his head,
Right.
and there were 6 people in the closet. Well, they could figure out at night how they could lay down, sideways, and all 6 could sleep. Well, after a week, they added person number 7.
Right.
After another week, they added person number 8, then person number 9, then person number 10 into that same closet.
And nobody could sleep.
Nobody could sleep. Now, 2 or 3 days of no sleep, sleep deprivation, well-known torture practice. When 2 or 3 days without sleep, you're willing to sign anything. Let me go to sleep. And so they would have these people come out. It was very important to the Soviets, to the KGB, the KGB, to say, hey, sign. We want you to sign that you did this, whatever it may be. Sign. Now, I don't know, I guess they wanted a record that prevented them from having guilt about the fact that they were going to send these people to slaughter in Sibir or whatever. You know, so this was a problem. Now, but like I say, you had a similar practice here in this country where you had defendants who had no rights. They had no lawyer, they had no one to intervene, and they could force confessions from defendants.
Right.
There were big reforms that happened, however, following, Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 in the United States, and the Burger Court and the 1964 Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act, a very important document and something that is worth studying in Ukraine to see what civil rights look like, not just the human rights that are rostered by the United Nations, but to see what true civil rights look like. A right to an attorney, a right to a trial by jury, a right to a speedy trial, a right to no punishment that's cruel and unusual, right? A right to a lower set bail, all these things that are criminal procedure rights. But one of the things they said was, you have a right to an attorney. The Miranda warning. You see it on TV all the time. You have a right to an attorney. You have a right to remain silent. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. You've got a right to cable TV. You have a right, you know what I mean?
Right.
You have a right to this, a right to that. But they brief the people before they interrogate them. Now, a lot of people don't understand that the Miranda warning does not have to be given until you're going to be interrogated. In other words, you can be arrested with no Miranda warning. Throw the cuffs on you, put you in the back of the car. You don't have to, there's no reason to give a warning. But if you expect to elicit testimony from the defendant, you have to give the Miranda warning. In some states, even that is insufficient because you have to demonstrate that the defendant, when he's giving his testimony, he's not on drugs, he's not intoxicated, he's of sound mind, capable of delivering it. He's doing so voluntarily, that he's had the opportunity to have a lawyer present, or he's waived that opportunity. All of those things have to be, and some states require that to be on video for his confession to be admissible.
Right.
Okay, now, if that's the case, we have a strong indicia of truth then on a confession that is given under those circumstances, compared to a confession that is beaten out of somebody, or somebody is electrocuted, or they threaten to kill their family, or they put them up against the wall and threaten to shoot them until they give their confession, whatever it may be. That is not a confession that you can rely upon. Now this is, we believe, was the case with Yaroslav.
That's exactly what happened to Yaroslav, because they received the confession very, very quickly, and then they say, oh, just he came and admitted, and we have guy confessed, so there is no need to any investigation. Guy just confessed. Anyway, guys, I'm a Bishop Vasyl Pechko, and I'm doing the media investigation together with the knowledgeable people, asking the question how this can happen. How this can happen that we just take a guy and make him guilty, throw him to the prison, and say, hey, well, he just admitted that he killed those people. And Vitaliy, you know this case also? And you were learning this way. What you can say about this?
Yes, for last 5 years since I met one pastor from Ukraine, Brother Peter, who was minister to life sentence prisoners in Vinnytsia, and who gave me a testimony about the dirty film which Ukraine was made up specifically on Yaroslav case, and shown on a first channel. So I found in my mind, on my head, if somebody spent $1,000 and represent a case as a pastor who killed relatives, how can I help to this family and Yaroslav? Because Yaroslav, I know personally, we was in the same Bible college in Kyiv.
Right, it looks fishy, right?
Yes,
when you look
fishy,
at this,
yeah.
It looks fishy. Why somebody wants to make a film to put the dirt on a pastor and saying, this pastor was this kind of guy, and why do we need to do it? If he was this well, there's lots of bad people. We don't do films about them.
Right.
So that was the reason people wanted to make Yaroslav guilty and put money into it, that they would inform the society saying, look, This was a pastor, a man with the Bible in his hand, and he killed his parent.
Right, and specifically, as you can see, in 3 days, 6 newspapers for whole district was already had make up history and represent he is guilty without investigation even, without a judge order even or anything. So I'm seeing it's already make up history. Plus, we spoke with a few defenders in Ukraine, and I personally read some verdicts in Ukraine. I'm seeing from studies of many cases when I'm working with a law firm, which is exactly many mistakes. So, and when I speak personally with Yaroslav many times, and with his mom, Magdalena, and wife, and human defenders and few attorneys, his attorneys, I found for last 6 years, we don't have a chance, zero, to prove and do parole for him. So probably petition is only one way for Yaroslav.
So now, listen, the guy was put onto the life in prison. First of all, he was...
As you remember, he should be shot, first of all.
Right.
Should be killed.
He should have been killed.
It was a death sentence.
Right, that's what was the beginning. And then they changed into the life in prison.
I just read the article of newspaper in Ukraine when I fly to Sacramento today. It's 1 page. And I found many mistakes even in this article. So nobody proved he's guilty, but newspapers after 18 months, Yaroslav was in jail. They said, thank you to the judge, thank you for prosecutor. They did actually great job.
Everything in Ukraine from the top to the bottom, everything is corrupted. You know, all the government level is corrupted. And people, Ukrainian people, made it corrupted.
Well, I think what's happening here in Ukraine is ready for reform. Clearly.
I believe so.
And, you know, there have been other countries, other former countries of the Soviet Union that have reformed, you know, the newly independent states. They have had some reforms. Some countries have done better in reforms than others.
Right.
But Ukraine is ripe for reform, and criminal justice reform is a real measure that will move Ukraine really from the 19th century, which is what this practice is, a 19th century practice, into the 21st century. Now, part of that has to do with, of course, there needs to be some kind of petition for relief. There should be a personal restraint petition that is available at some high court level. Now, a specialty court was created about 4 years ago in Ukraine that could handle these kinds of issues. The current president, who's had Yaroslav's petition for a pardon placed on his desk and has returned it and said, I don't feel merciful towards this particular guy, primarily because the press was so prejudicial against him. But a high court could entertain a personal restraint petition and say, okay, we'll bring your case forward. And then if Yaroslav could bring the case forward and show that in fact his confession was coerced, then we have a confession that should be struck from the record. In other words, it should be excluded and not considered at all. Okay, so if you've got a presumption of innocence, you have to make a finding of guilt. Now you can't use the coerced confession. Well, what do you use? Well, there's no statute of limitations on a triple homicide, right? Triple murder, no statute of limitations. Okay, let's try the case. Let's try the case. Now we have an opportunity to present facts. We have an opportunity to present witnesses. We have an opportunity to present alibis. We have an opportunity to present other motives and other potential perpetrators, which we believe, you know, our review of the record indicates that there's some pretty clear potential perpetrators who had both motive and opportunity to do the crime well beyond Yaroslav. But there were a number of factors that were happening. You know this word, Pastor, Stunde, right? Stunde, right? And we know this.
Oh, yeah.
We know this word. Now, we know that this is a derogatory term, and it's used to criticize someone who is known to be a person of prayer, right?
Right.
Oh, you're a person of prayer, Stunde.
Yeah.
You are beneath dignity. You are not part of the Soviet system. You are not a communist atheist. You are Stunde.
You do not
Right?
support their system.
You don't support atheism, which is the norm. And even to this day, even though Vladimir Putin comes out and says, "Oh, we're an Orthodox nation," when you get to Yekaterinburg, out there in Sibir in Russia,
Right.
when you get to Yekaterinburg, the vast population there is still atheist, and they still accuse people of being Stunde.
Right. That's
Okay,
true.
so you have an atheist press who thinks that Christians are crazy, right? And that Christians have no business being in this society, and that these people, particularly people who are outside of orthodoxy, right? You're in the Baptist Union, you're in the Pentecostal Union. No, this is not so much the case in Ukraine today, although there still is residual aspects of this. But at the time Yaroslav was on trial, those, Baptist and Pentecostal Union were despised. You don't work here, you can't rent here, you can't live here, we don't want to see you, you're Stunde.
Right. You cannot be in any part of leadership. So they were paying attention. You are not in a part of any, even small leadership, like somewhere on a factory. You cannot be a manager, supervisor, or anything. You cannot be a man who are able to influence the society. You can be down, everybody need to know that you are nobody. That was the case. But now Ukraine is different. It's not a part of the Soviet Union, but still using the law of the Soviet Union, like
Sure,
for
you
the
have
case
this
of Yaroslav.
you've got this leftover, you've got this hangover. And part of this hangover is this improper persecution and improper prosecution of Yaroslav Missyak. So what you see here is this, with Yaroslav, if Ukraine were to look at this, it's a structural situation that they have to change, not just for Yaroslav, but for everyone else who was wrongfully imprisoned under an old system, an old, ancient, teetering system of no due process rights and really no rules of evidence to hold to structure the thing so you get some measure of justice.
Right.
And so what I'm petitioning Ukraine to do is to consider this idea of incorporating the personal restraint petition at the High Court, and have the opportunity for the High Court to consider and look to this whole opportunity so prisoners can come forward and say, I want to put forward my personal restraint petition to say I'm wrongfully imprisoned because I can establish by a preponderance of the evidence that my confession was coerced. And because it was coerced, you should exclude it from the record and then review the record to see if there is anything that supports a conviction. Of course, when you're convicted exclusively on a coerced confession, there's nothing else there. So out goes the confession, and the court says, okay, there is no confession, we cannot sustain the conviction, but yet you're in prison. Let's retry the case, and let's retry the case now on facts and witnesses.
Right. So I think in the Yaroslav case, there would be no facts and there would be no witnesses, because if they would have the witnesses, they would be presenting the witnesses. My idea is that if man was a preacher all the time, then they made him guilty. And then he went to the prison because nothing he could have done, Then he continues serving the Lord, preaching to the people who are alive in prison, bringing the gospel there and living the worthy life in prison. So doesn't it tell us that, listen, it doesn't look like this guy could have done it? Because I believe he would have become already crazy, or something would happen to his, emotional system.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a number of indicia that does not point to what they call mens rea, or an evil state of mind.
Right.
One, he was a Christian pastor before this happened.
Right.
Two, after he gets convicted, his wife, who is also a stand-up Christian, doesn't leave him.
Yeah, he's still waiting for him.
She's still waiting for him, and she's still waiting for him. And would she still wait for somebody she knew committed 3 murders of his own family? Of course not. She wouldn't. And in prison, he has been a pastor. So when you see this, you have some very strong indicia that the mens rea element, the evil state of mind, which is, in jurisprudence, we have this thing, the old doctrines used to be what was called the corpus delicti. The corpus delicti. And you had to prove 2 things. You had to prove the mens rea, which is the evil state of mind, and you had to prove the actus reus, which is that you were the proximate cause of whatever the event was. You had to prove those two things in order to convict the criminal of the crime. So you'd have to prove that, yeah, he did it, and he did it with an evil state of mind. He did it with intent. He intended to do it, which means what? You have to prove motive and opportunity. Now, every good investigator knows that you might be able to show motive, you might be able to show opportunity, but if he has an alibi, and he has an alibi by 2 or more witnesses, then the alibi is established as a matter of truth. This is a biblical principle.
Exactly.
Right? By 2 or more witnesses, the matter is established. And those 2 or more witnesses can actually be evidence too, not just 2 people saying, blah, 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 blah. You can have evidence such as, gee, he didn't have keys to the car. The site of the crime was too far away to him to walk and return home within any reasonable amount of time. There was, his blood wasn't found at the scene of the crime. Their blood was not found on him. I mean, these are also things that testify to whether or not he's guilty. But we know that what they tried to claim, what the press tried to claim was motive and opportunity, was very, very scant. They looked for motive and opportunity in order to defame the Stunde.
Right.
In order to, because if you could defame the Stunde, especially maybe a rising guy who's really going to do work for the kingdom, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to be doing work for the kingdom. So this man we have to assassinate. This man's character we have to destroy. This man's gospel testimony we have to erode. We have to destroy it in order to debase it, in order to maintain what? The atheism that we have going here, which is our power base, which is our logical understanding, which continues to enforce among the people that live here, we're in control, you're not. And think about the teaching that used to happen in Soviet schools, right?
Yes.
They would tell the child, okay, how many of you believe in God? And the one child would put his hands up. Okay, you go ahead and pray for lunch, and the rest of you ask the state for lunch. Then come lunch, they feed everybody but the kid, right?
Right.
The lesson over and over and over again. Your God does nothing. Your God does nothing. Your God does nothing. Lenin does everything, right?
Exactly.
Khrushchev does everything. Stalin does everything.
Yep. They were trying to brainwash every child since the school. I was persecuted in a school. I was persecuted in the army. I was persecuted as a pastor after the army. And I was just already giving up on this. I was saying the people of my age, 53, they are corrupted completely. And they will not change anything. We need the young generation to raise up, stand up, and change their country as they want to see the country. But, people like my age, they didn't want to give up. And it's really tough to do it. And I don't know if we can do it or how we can do it. Like, at least now in the United States, we can speak about this. If in Ukraine I would speak about some kind of system or some kind of police system or criminal system, the people would come to me and say, shut your mouth, or we will shut it up ourselves. And
right.
It's not going to be good for you. And I would have no right to speak. Like right here in the United States, I can speak. Nobody tell me, they can agree with me, disagree with me, but at least I can speak.
Yeah.
So there is none. So, Stephen, how can we change Ukraine, or how can we influence to change Ukraine that the law would come different? Because people, give up. They don't want to do anything. They don't do anything. They just complain. They say, we have a corruption. Everybody's saying we have a corruption, but nobody changing the system.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting problem, because you always have a post-Soviet expectation. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, you still had many people that had a communist expectation. I don't want to pay for my electricity. I don't want to pay for my apartment. I don't want to pay for food. I'm not going to do that. This stuff was free. It's got to remain free.
Right.
So when all of a sudden they're getting an electric bill, they want to kill somebody, And so this kind of thing, this was a huge problem.
Like they were not ready for the change.
They weren't ready for the change because you had a communist expectation. Okay.
The mind,
But now, people who live in Ukraine, we do a lot of immigration work out of Ukraine, and so we hear a lot of personal testimonies. We hear testimonies concerning Azov, or a right sector, or this presidential party, or the party of regions, or this particular aspect, or the Ukrainian Orthodox Church versus Russian Orthodox Church. But we also get testimony concerning the interface between Ukraine and Poland, Ukraine and Germany. and how Ukraine is leaning now towards Western Europe and not to the CIS, the Commonwealth of Independent States, that's headed by the Russian Federation.
Right.
You know, the Russian Federation, even though there's been many changes in the Russian Federation still has very much an expectation of an autocracy, a single man at the top controlling the country, and controlling the country with the fist.
Right.
But in Ukraine, you see a different expectation. You see a lot of people in Ukraine who've been in America. You've seen a lot of people in Ukraine who've been in Western Europe. The drivers are driving throughout all Western Europe. They're seeing, not like during Stalin's days when you couldn't see Germany. Don't look. You know, Stalin would tell everybody in the Soviet Union, we have the best of everything.
Right.
But until people saw Germany. And then if you saw
because
Germany...
they've never been anywhere. You need to stay in a country. You have no right to live in the country. You know, I've been told many times and say, America is bad and everybody is bad. And I say, well, let me go there and see. And they say, you cannot go there and see, but believe us, it's bad. I say, I don't believe you. I believe that they are good. There's lots of good people like us. I was coming to my mom and telling her after the school, I say, Mom, listen, they say that America is this and this, and she says, well, they say because this is a politics, they want to, put a dirt on other country, but there is people like us living there. And I say, but they say that they're going to kill us. They say, nobody's looking to kill us. This is just the communist politics. And I got it. I was a child. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really not true what they say. They were trying to brainwash us. But anyway, today we have already like a free country. People go back and forth. But why is so hard to change? Like, to stand up and say, okay, we're going to change what is wrong. Like kind of like dump everything what is wrong out of your house, what is smelly and dirty, and clean it up and change it, remodel your house, make it new. So why this is so hard? Why the system doesn't want to change?
Sure, and in Ukraine, you have an interesting situation. I used to do work in Georgia,
right.
Georgia, and
right.
in Georgia they did systemic change, and they did it with a meat cleaver. Mm-hmm. Zurab Nogadeli, boom. There were 380 bureaucracies in the country, and he terminated 300 of them. You're finished. You're out of business. You're gone. Bye. And they ended the whole communist era. And then they fired all the police, sold all the Ladas, bought Volvos, and brought in a new police department, right?
That was crazy. I know. I remember this.
And all of a sudden, boom, hey, the police look professional and sharp, and nobody's taking bribes on the street anymore. And things look good, at least for a little while, right?
Right.
Of course, the old ways come back. But, during the Orange Revolution, you had Yulia Tymoshenko who said, Ukraine will not stand on its feet until it gets on its knees. Okay,
right.
Fine in theory. But there was a lot of the air taken out of the Orange Revolution, mm-hmm. With the various regimes that were pro-Russian, mm-hmm. and you remember the poisoning of the president.
Oh yeah.
And so these things happen, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I describe the Russian psyche. I forget, Winston Churchill said it's a mystery wrapped in an enigma, right?
Right.
But I describe the Russian psyche as, hope vanquished, do it again. Hope vanquished, do it again, right? And if you ever have that, the tallest blade of grass is the first one cut. And if you ever get that point where you think, well, I'm not going to hope, I'm done hoping, forget it, I'm not going to hope, and then you get that little glimmer of hope, right? Boom, vanquished.
That's it. And
so when this happens over and over again, pretty soon you say, okay, we can't change. We can't do a thing about it. We've tried. It's done. We're done. We're finished. We don't have that spark of life anymore. But yet, that spark of life is still there. Why? Because the word of truth is still there. The word of the gospel is still there. The gospel brings life, and it brings life to people immediately. It is the way, the truth, and the life. And there is no deterrent. There is no slowdown. There is no stop. Because you can give your life for that and be willing to give your life. Because, ultimately, it doesn't make any difference how you die. It makes a difference how you live.
Exactly.
And so here's the thing in Ukraine. We have an opportunity now because the guard is changing. The guard is changing in Ukraine. Young people are coming in.
Right.
And a lot of the really top, bought-off oligarchs are being pushed away, right?
Right.
Okay, so the young people come in, and look, you think the president of Ukraine doesn't have a smartphone?
Right.
He has a smartphone. He has his apps. He's using WhatsApp. He's using Zelle. He's using VK. He's using Facebook.
Exactly.
He's using Twitter, right?
Everything.
He's using all this. So what doesn't he know about the West? He knows. It's right there.
Everything.
And this is the whole thing. This is what's going on around the world. Everybody knows. They know. So why do you cling? Why do you cling to this tired wallpaper, to this tired Soviet wallpaper? Why do you cling to this wallpaper? There's no reason. So the young people have an opportunity to do something. And what I'm saying to you is this. You have several things happening. One, Ukraine is tilted towards the West. And in the West, the EU cannot risk having German citizens go into Ukraine and be imprisoned the way Yaroslav was imprisoned.
Exactly.
Right? A Frenchman is not going to go in there. An Englishman is not going to go into Ukraine and risk being imprisoned on a coerced confession.
Exactly.
And so, when you're asking yourself the question in Ukraine, what's it going to take for us to be admitted into the EU? Well, what it's going to take is, and I'm just going to tell the Ukrainian leadership right now, lose the Soviet wallpaper. When you lose the Soviet wallpaper, which starts with creating an effective and up-to-date criminal justice system that allows for the wrongfully imprisoned to bring a petition of personal restraint to the highest court in the land and say, I need a new trial. That's part of responsible jurisprudence. That's part of due process. That's part of being not a third world nation, not a second world nation, but a first world nation. And I think that's in the heart of Ukrainians, to be a first world nation.
I believe so. I believe so. I do believe so. I believe that Ukraine actually is a nice country. It's a nice country to live. There's generous people. If whatever house you're going to come, they will greet you with respect. They will receive you. They will feed you and everything. If you're going to go there in Ukraine, you will see that there is a nice people. They have a bad system. And this system has to change. And we have today a question, how can we change this system? So we have lots of people who know and understand how to change the system, but we all need to change the system. We all need to stop the corruption. We need to stop being the people we used to be. We need to remodel our home, our country, completely. Get rid of this smelly stuff from the past. We need to change ourselves, everybody on every level, beginning from the president and finishing with every simple worker, janitorial, or whoever it is.
Andrei Didenko, a human defender from Kharkov, he told me the criminal system in Ukraine for 59 years never changed. So the criminal law is still punishing law. And his article, what he published in Ukraine, already translated in English, one of a newspaper, it said in the area of Stalin was 5 times more mercy and pardon than we have right now in Ukraine. So it shows the country report for us, and only one deputy doing petition to change the law right now. Everything else dreaming, I think.
Looks like nobody cares.
Yeah, I think all people in Ukraine right now are just thinking to immigrate in America.
So we wanna run to America. But America is a nice country, but I'm just kind of like curious why people don't care if somebody is imprisoned or put to the life in prison without proven guilty. Kind of like a confession was taken after him, just threatening his family, his life, his children, his wife. Because, like in the case of Yaroslav, his wife is still with him for 22 years.
Right, yeah.
He never left him. He never got married. The daughter is waiting. The parents never believed. Because, listen, if he would really murdered, let's say this way, his grandma, his grandpa, and his uncle, the family first would not forgive him. They would say, man, get out of our way. We never want to see you again. You go to the prison where you belong to. Listen, if my brother or my son or whoever would do this to my parents, first of all, what I want to say, get out of my face. I don't want to see you again. Why would I be for him? He killed the most closest, dearest people, right?
Right.
So, but they were not against him. They believed him that he is innocent. And they were trying to prove. Many times I knew him. I knew his father, who's already going to be with the Lord. And many times they were telling him, very soon it's going to be over. Stephen, many times they were telling me, it was 15, 20 years ago, listen, Vasyl, it's just everything is becoming obvious. Very soon he's going to be free. He's going to be with us. They told me many times. And I believe this, and I say, yeah, maybe they're figuring out things and everything is going to be clear, and it's going to change, but nothing changed. 22 years later, we're still speaking about this.
Right.
What do you think, Vitaliy?
So, and again, affects his active Gideon brother. So this is a fact. The brothers in Ukraine, they believe in innocent. I spoke with Alessia, who's the daughter.
Yeah.
She is an amazing kid. She is only 24, already has a child. She said, I do believe my dad will be soon home.
I believe he was at the prison serving the people, bringing people to Christ. And sometimes I talk to him, we talk with, because
through
we have
messenger.
the opportunity through Messenger, see each other and pray together. And I see how much peace this man has, the Yaroslav. And even I don't have so much, I have peace, but I don't have so much patience as he has. He is so nice, so calm, so polite, not just saying, everybody is this, no complaints from this
Never
guy.
complain, never.
Never complain. He's so peaceful. We pray together. He's so full of hope. He's serving. He's not wasting his time there.
Yes, he's not.
So, and I'm just saying, listen, it's so easy for us to be just busy with our own stuff, and we don't care about our brother.
Yes.
There's
Yes,
a country
I do.
with the good people, with the bad system.
It actually is. I love the Russian people. I love the Ukrainian people and the Slavic people in general. It's a wonderful culture, and it is a culture full of people. When I meet the Russian families, the Slavic families.
Right.
You're right. For me, one of the biggest things that happened in my life was to be invited in for dinner.
Right.
Right.
Enjoying their house.
And David and Irina, they invited me in for dinner just to be able to sit at the table with them. It didn't make any difference what we were eating.
Right.
I was sitting at the table having dinner with them in their house, in their culture. Mm-hmm. And to walk the streets, and I've been from St. Petersburg to the Caucasus Mountains in Russia. And, to walk through people's homes and to walk through the cities and to know the culture and to know of the struggles. You have people that they're in all cultures, all people, all tongues, all tribes, all nations. You have people that have expectation. They have hope. They want to be something in their life. They don't want their life to be wasted. They don't want their life to be controlled. They don't want to have to live under tyranny. Right. They want to be able to to excel in their life and to do what they have been called to do in their life, in their walk, Right. And to have a system come in and oppress that and routinely just push it down and push it down and push it down and say, oh, no, we have a corruption thing to do here. I have to make money on you. I have to take your earnings away from you and put it in my pocket. I have to steal your business and put it in my pocket. I have to rule over you so that I can buy a big house in Sochi and have a boat in the Black Sea.
Right.
That's
right. So, but that's what we need to change, and that's what I believe. I really, living here in the United States for a long time, I still do love my country. I still would love them to excel and to prosper and to build nice cities and nice villages and roads and businesses. It's a beautiful country. So, but what we can do, how we can change this thing, what can you say to Americans? Like, you are American here, you're just speaking on behalf of Ukraine. What would you say, what we can do, how we can help them to change?
Yes, well, in America, there are many systems in America now. You're talking to a country that has the largest prison population in the world.
Yeah.
And as many as 45% of the people in this country have been wrongfully convicted and are serving excessive sentences and have had due process deprivations. And so many of my friends are involved, including Vitaliy, who are involved in prison ministry. We do a lot of prison ministry in one of my other companies where we put scripture into various prisons at no charge to people who ask. And, so we've done a lot of this addressing, but I have other friends who are working all the time on setting aside wrongful convictions, doing personal restraint petitions, and coming forward and saying, look, you need to think about what it is that you do to another person when you decide you're going to put them in prison. Oh, you know, there's a famous saying in America, oh, I'd throw that guy in jail and toss away the key. You say that until it's you being convicted. Wow. You know, you asked a critical question here. It's a very important point. How did this happen to Yaroslav?
Right.
You know, believe me, this happens in America too. You know, you're going along in your life, and suddenly some event happens, and you're in the crosshairs.
Right.
You're in the crosshairs now. Now the criminal justice system is looking at you, right. Not someone else, you. And once you're in the crosshairs, you know, they put you on the train to Auschwitz. You know, once they arrest you, you're on the train to Auschwitz. When you're a criminal defense attorney like me, you're asking yourself the question, how do I get my client off that train before he gets to that gas chamber?
Right.
How do you do it? You know, and these are big questions. And the fact of the matter is that we as a country, America, we have a responsibility here in America to treat the accused with due process, exactly. With all full civil rights. Right. And in addition to that, we need to stand for that, not just here, but to stand for it worldwide and to say everywhere. Those people all over the world, you know, look, there are people that are in concentration camps in China right now, right? And re-education camps. You know that there are Christians that have been put into re-education camps in China, and they're having their organs harvested from them alive. And their offense is being Christian, right? There are Muslims that have been put in re-education camps. There are Falun Gong members put in re-education camps. Who is standing up and saying this is incorrect? Who is standing up and saying you cannot wrongfully imprison people for life in some gulag with no due process? Hey, we didn't like you. You know, I mean, I'll mention a name. How about Mikhail Hodorkovsky, the former owner of Yukos Oil, right?
Right.
He was declared to be the richest man in Russia.
Yep.
So Vladimir Putin had him arrested on the airstrip at Yekaterinburg, put him into prison out in Siberia, where he's rotting to this very day, and now Vladimir Putin's the richest man in Russia. See how that went?
He just took what belonged to him. That's it. Well, what would you say to Ukrainian people?
I would say to Ukraine has a tremendous opportunity here, and the president of Ukraine has a tremendous opportunity to lead. Don't just sit there, because if you just sit there, then you know you're going to have the same fate as Poroshenko. You know, you'll have the same fate as Timoshenko. Do you want to sit there? No, you can't just sit there. You have to do something. And you're a modern guy. Modernize your country. You know, don't drive the Lada. Go out there and buy yourself a new Audi. How about that, right?
That's it.
And do the same thing for the country. Make the country an Audi, not a Lada.
Right, right. I believe this is very true. This is very true. And I believe that Ukrainian people are the ones to change their own country. So we can talk about changes in Ukraine here in America because we have freedom to speak, and nobody's coming and saying, shut up, you know, we're going to shoot you, or we're going to steal your children or something like that. We can say anything. Nobody's threatening us. In Ukraine, I believe it's nobody threatening them today like it used to be, but there is still this old method at work. But anyway, I think always, I just say to the young people, guys, stand up, raise up, you know, and change your country. Do what you want to see. And listen, when you start changing, we're going to be with you to encourage you, to help you, to stay with you. And that's how we can do it. And listen, we cannot build a nice country when we put innocent people in jail, not giving them the due process, the fair trials, and we just let them sit there and being in a prison for whatever time, nobody cares. And we also don't care because that's not my family, it's not my brother. Who is this guy to me? I don't even know him. When I started to learn these cases in Ukraine, and I was presented many cases, that's why I decided to speak as a bishop coming from Ukraine, but today I'm American citizen. I started to speak about this in my shows and my talk shows and asking the question. I would love to change the country, but I cannot change the country myself, only speaking. But together we can change the country. If we unite, and if we're really going to be saying, well, listen, I do care that this guy sitting there, if this is guy even nobody to me, but why he was treated wrongly, why he was not given the opportunity to defend himself, why we are making case against him just because he was on a cross this way. So that's the case. Stephen, what can you say? What would you say to the Yaroslav and to the people as Yaroslav who are sitting right now wrongfully in prison, and they not much they can do? What would you tell them as the criminal law attorney, how they can stand up for themselves, what they can do?
Well, for most people that are in prison, I would say, look, blessings to you. I mean, there's not much that can be said. The system has to change on the outside. And you know, when you're in prison, you don't have a lot of opportunity to do much. You know, you can inhale and exhale and try to see tomorrow. And that's pretty much it. But have faith, have confidence, recognize that we are under blessing. There is a blessing, there is mercy, there is compassion. And even though these things have happened, you know, quite often we see that, and I hate to use the word, but in the martyrdom of the saints comes massive change. You know, if you study the martyrdom of Polycarp, you know, when Polycarp was 84 years old, they came to him and said, you need to denounce the Christian faith. And he said, well, I'm not going to do it. And they said, yeah, you are, or we're going to kill you. And he said, well, okay, well, if that's the case, if you're going to kill me, then do it. And they said, well, wait a minute, you know, we're just kidding. We don't really want to kill you. We just want you to just kind of step aside and say you don't believe that stuff anymore. And he said, well, I'm not going to do it. And you said you were going to kill me. Kill me. Well, wait a minute. That's going to embarrass us in the public square if we kill you.
Exactly.
That's going to really hurt our image. Oh, well, that's too bad. You said you were going to do it. Now do it. And you know that he was the last Christian martyr of the Roman Empire. He was the last Christian martyr of the Roman Empire because he made them do what they said they were going to do. Now we have a situation in Ukraine where Ukraine says, oh, well, we're now a diverse nation and a nation of religious freedom, right? Which, of course, is protected under the United Nations human rights objectives, which Ukraine is a signing party to.
Right.
And, you know, Ukraine keeps violating these human rights. At some point, you may find yourself in the International Criminal Court. But the fact is that these human rights require religious diversity. And so when you look at the religious diversity, what does this mean? You don't have religious diversity in Russia. Now, Vitaliy and I, we do a lot of immigration. As part of our immigration, from time to time, we get asylum clients. And the asylum clients come in, and we have to make representations in front of the court. This country is the kind of country from which you would need asylum. You know, like Kazakhstan.
Right.
Kazakhstan is one of the most horrible countries in the world in terms of human rights violations. Boom, its number just plummets right down to nothing. What are they, 11th in the world worst offender?
Right.
They're a horrible nation. And so if somebody comes out of Kazakhstan and says, hey, I'm being persecuted in Kazakhstan, very easy to make the case. Yes. Russia plummeted in terms of its human rights reputation following the 2016 law outlawing the Baptist Union, outlawing the Pentecostal Church, outlawing the Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, if you're caught in Russia with any Jehovah's Witnesses material on your cell phone, you go to prison.
Right.
Right? And so, but Ukraine also has a tarnished bad image. We have expert witnesses that will stand up in court and say, a Pentecostal member is still persecuted in Ukraine. A Baptist Union member is still persecuted in Ukraine.
Right.
That is still a testimony. How can you allow that to be a testimony in Ukraine? How is that possible in Ukraine anymore? Right?
Right.
Become a part of the modern world. Leave those trappings behind. Join the rest of the world.
Well, there is maybe not that many persecution right now, and they're not trying to do it. They became the modern country. But there are still people who used to be a communist, atheists, who were against the Christians. There's, of course, many people who changed, and even they became Christians. Right now, we don't have that persecution level as we used to have. Many of you don't even know what the persecution means. But many people do. Many people do. So we need to speak for those who cannot speak, for those who are in prison and they cannot change the system. We, outside of this prison, outside of the system, need to speak.
So when I spoke with one of Ukrainian chaplains a few months ago, he said the torture just ended 4 years ago in his prison, his service.
So the torture was still done in prison.
It was before until 4 years ago.
My goodness.
So this is a testimony from inside. And the bill, what we're doing right now, 3078, amendment to the Code of Criminal Procedure of Ukraine, this is what they must to do. And if a petition already will be listened on 6th of October, why Ukrainians doesn't want to sign this petition to change criminal law?
Right.
And same what we asking, and I spoke with both attorneys for Yaroslav case, and we're doing petition of pardon to Ukraine president right now. Why the people in Ukraine right here who still are residents or citizens of Ukraine doesn't want help us to sign petition, and we need just about 5,000-10,000 people to sign, and it will be electronically. You can receive email and just simple sign. This is what we're asking right now for other people from Ukraine, and of course, brothers and sisters who are born in US and citizens of America. Please help us to sign the change.org petition of pardon to the president of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky. This is what we're asking. And plus, in my heart, when I spoke with pro bono attorney, Vladimir, he helping in case of Yaroslav, he never received even a penny. So it will be great if we can compensate him maybe a few $100 at least and say thank you, because he's a Christian brother. He's doing pro bono work for 6 years without any compensation. So this is my call to some brothers and sisters here in America who would like to donate maybe a few dollars to help with case, with petition, with pardon, and just donate some money maybe to Snezhana. She lives in a small one-bedroom apartment, just to do maybe fixing some stuff and help paying for bills.
Snezhana, the wife of Yaroslav, who still for 22 years continue waiting Yaroslav, and she believes he's going to be free one day and come back home. But can you imagine? 22 years, she's waiting him. She never remarried, never left him, and they do believe in his innocence. She's an example for many of us how to be faithful and how to believe in husband and support husband. My dears, we can be at the help. Any of us, each of us, we can help them anyway. First of all, we ask to pray for this family. Second, sign a petition together with us, as you can see the link, and help us to help them.
I have confidence, Vasyl, I have confidence that this is in fact going to take place. I think that this is the future for Ukraine. I think it's a structural change coming in Ukraine, and I think it's going to be very good for the country. And I think once they put these structural changes in place, they're going to be able to address a lot of these really kind of, they're kind of like, these long lingering sins really of the old country that have to be atoned for. And they can be atoned for, they can be cured, these problems can be taken care of with a structural change. It's not a huge structural change to make. It's a new expectation, but it is part of bringing Ukraine into modernity. And it's worth the time to do it. It's worth the time not only for the people that are in prison now, but for the people that are going to face prosecution in the future. And you don't know who those people may be. I mean, the way it stands right now, we have this huge corruption scandal surrounding an energy company out of Ukraine. And, if that scandal keeps going and keeps going, we don't know what that prosecution is going to look like. We don't know how many people will be prosecuted in the United States and how much pressure may come on Ukraine to prosecute some of the people that are remaining in Ukraine. Isn't it reasonable for those people who may be facing prosecution in the future to demand due process? Isn't that appropriate? Shouldn't they be able to get a modern structure from which they can defend themselves? I think so. And I think it's well worth the time of the president to take care of this issue and to go to the parliament and say, you need to take care of this issue. We need to structure reforms to the criminal law and the criminal law system to provide for a personal restraint petition that reviews people that were convicted in the old system to determine whether or not they got due process in a modern form.
Absolutely agree. Thank you very much, Stephen. We had with us Stephen Pidgeon, the criminal justice attorney, and I do appreciate that you came here to be with us and speak about this matter.
I'm very glad to be here.
We also have Vitaliy Musiyenko. He is the assistant of attorney, and he's also came here to speak on this issue. We're talking not only about the Yaroslav case in Ukraine. There's lots of wrongly imprisoned people, and we want really to change this situation in Ukraine, but we can do it together. And we want you to know what's going on. So just please, whatever we ask you, like sign a petition, help us, maybe financially. You can donate, just go to our website and donate and help this process to move on. Maybe you don't care, maybe you care, but if you care, we can do it together. Thank you very much for being with us. My name is Vasyl Pechko. I'm a bishop, and I have a question. And this question I will continue asking until I see the change. Thank you for being with us tonight. You have a wonderful night, a wonderful evening, a wonderful day. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.